They told me I was lying about being pregnant, even as I collapsed on the concrete floor holding my stomach. The cramping started during my shift at the campus library, not the gentle kind that comes and goes, but the sharp, twisting pain that steals your breath and makes your vision blur at the edges. I gripped the edge of the circulation desk, trying to stay upright, trying to look normal. I was 22 weeks along with triplets, and every day felt like carrying the weight of the world inside my already fragile body. I'd been working double shifts to cover tuition. My scholarships had fallen through when I missed too many classes during the first trimester. The morning sickness had been relentless, leaving me hollow and weak. Nobody tells you that carrying 3 babies means 3 times the nausea, 3 times the exhaustion, 3 times the fear, especially when you're doing it alone, with nothing but student loans and a part-time job keeping you afloat. The pain intensified. I made it to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and tried to breathe through it. When I stood up, I saw the blood. Not much, but enough to send ice through my veins. I called the campus health center with shaking hands, but they'd closed 15 minutes early. Of course they had. I gathered my things and headed for the bus stop, planning to go to the emergency room. That's when I saw the commotion near the student union. Police cars, campus security, a crowd forming. Someone had reported a theft at the bookstore, expensive electronics. They were stopping people, checking bags. I wasn't worried. My backpack held nothing but textbooks, my water bottle, and the folder of medical paperwork I carried everywhere now. Ultrasound images, doctor's notes, nutrition guidelines I couldn't afford to follow. I approached the officer when he gestured to me, ready to open my bag and be on my way. But when I unzipped it, his expression changed. He reached in and pulled out a tablet I'd never seen before, top of the line, still in its security case. "That's not mine," I said immediately. "I've never seen that before. Someone must have—" "Save it." His hand was already on his radio. "We've got one here." The next officer was less polite. They zip-tied my wrists behind my back, despite my protests, despite me trying to explain about the bleeding, about the babies, about needing medical attention. Another wave of cramping hit, and I doubled over as much as I could with my hands restrained. "She's faking," someone said. A security guard, young, annoyed. They always do this. They walked me past staring students, past my study group who whispered and looked away, past the library supervisor who'd complimented my work ethic just that morning. Shame burned through me, hot and acidic, mixing with the fear. At the campus police station, I tried again. "Please, I'm pregnant. I'm bleeding. I need medical attention." The officer processing me barely looked up. "You'll be seen when you're processed." "I'm carrying triplets. 22 weeks. Something's wrong, please." "Sit down and be quiet." They took my phone, my wallet, my bag. They made me remove my shoes, the only pair that still fit my swollen feet. The plastic chair was rigid and cold, and every position sent new jolts of pain through my abdomen. I counted my breaths, trying to stay calm for the babies. "Stress is bad for them," the doctor had said. "Keep your blood pressure down." An hour passed, then 2. I asked 3 more times for medical help. The 3rd time, the officer threatened to charge me with causing a disturbance. I stopped asking after that. When they finally transferred me downtown to county holding, the cramping had spread to my back. It felt like something was tearing inside me, slow and methodical. The transport van had no suspension, and every pothole sent shock waves through my body. I bit my lip until I tasted copper, refusing to cry out, refusing to give them a reason to dismiss me further. County intake took another 3 hours. They photographed me from multiple angles, noting the dark circles under my eyes, my obvious pregnancy, the way I couldn't stand straight anymore. A nurse glanced at me through a window and marked something on a clipboard. I thought maybe that would be my chance. "I need to see a doctor," I said when she came to take my blood pressure. "I'm pregnant with triplets and I'm having complications." She wrapped the cuff around my arm without meeting my eyes. "Pressure's high. When's your due date?" "October. But I'm bleeding now and the pain—" "You'll be scheduled for OB if needed." She removed the cuff. "Next." "If needed?" My voice cracked. "I'm telling you something is wrong." "We have protocols. If you're truly having an emergency, you'd be showing more obvious signs." More obvious than bleeding? Than not being able to stand? I wanted to scream, but I swallowed it down. Getting labeled difficult would only make things worse. They placed me in a holding cell with 7 other women. The space was designed for 4. 1 toilet, no privacy, fluorescent lights that never turned off. The concrete bench was the only place to sit or lie down. I found a corner and curled up as best I could, one hand pressed to my stomach. "First time?" a woman asked. She was older, weathered, with kind eyes. I nodded. "They'll sort it out. Public defender will get you out on Monday." Monday? It was Friday evening. But I didn't do anything, and I need a doctor. "Baby, we all need something in here." She wasn't being cruel, just honest. "Best thing you can do is stay quiet and wait." But waiting felt impossible when every hour brought new pains, new fears. The babies had been so active lately, their movements my constant reassurance that we were all still fighting together. Now I couldn't feel them anymore. The silence inside my womb was deafening. The night stretched endlessly. Every time I shifted position, pain radiated through my pelvis. The bleeding was worse. I could feel it, warm and terrifying. I asked the guard making rounds if I could see a medical professional. "It's Friday night," he said, bored. "Medical's on call only. You having chest pain? Difficulty breathing?" "I'm pregnant and bleeding." "You're moving around fine. It's not an emergency." He walked away before I could respond. One of the other women offered me her thin blanket. Another shared her dinner roll when I couldn't eat the cold, congealed meal they'd brought. Small kindnesses in a place designed to strip away your humanity. I tried to sleep, but the fear wouldn't let me. I thought about the father of these babies, a man I'd met at a scholarship gala 9 months ago. He'd been charming, successful, magnetic in ways I'd never experienced. He'd made me feel seen, special, possible. We'd spent one incredible night together, and then he'd disappeared. No returned calls, no messages. I'd found out later, through news articles and social media, exactly who he was. Nathan Cross, billionaire real estate developer, perpetual bachelor, untouchable. When I'd discovered the pregnancy, I'd tried reaching out one final time. His assistant had been polite but clear. Mr. Cross wasn't interested in paternity claims or contact. I could pursue legal channels if I wished. I didn't have money for lawyers. I barely had money for food. So I'd made peace with doing this alone, with being a single mother to 3 babies, with figuring it out somehow. But lying on that concrete bench, feeling my body betray itself and my children, all I could think was how unfair it all was. He got to walk away clean. I got to bleed in a cell while being called a liar. By Saturday morning, I couldn't stand without help. The cramping had evolved into contractions, unmistakable, rhythmic, wrong. I was only 22 weeks. The babies couldn't survive outside me yet. They needed more time, more growth, more chance. "Please," I begged the morning shift guard. "Something is very wrong. I think I'm in labor." This one was different. A woman, middle-aged, with a daughter's photo on her badge holder. She actually looked at me, really looked, and I saw concern flicker across her face. "How far along are you?" 22 weeks. Triplets. I've been bleeding since yesterday before I was even arrested, and now I'm having contractions. Triplets? Her expression shifted. Why wasn't this noted in your intake file? I told them, multiple times. They said it wasn't an emergency. She swore under her breath and called for her supervisor. 15 minutes later, I was being escorted out of the cell, still in restraints, still in pain, but finally moving toward help. They took me to the medical unit, a sterile room with an examination table and basic equipment. The on-call nurse practitioner arrived 20 minutes later, annoyed at being called in on the weekend. "Let's see what we've got," she said, snapping on gloves. The examination was brief and rough. She confirmed the bleeding, checked my vital signs, and palpated my stomach with detached efficiency. When she pulled out the portable fetal monitor, my heart stopped. She moved it across my belly, searching for heartbeats. 1, steady, strong, fast. 2, fainter, but there. 3, she searched for almost a minute before finding it, weak and irregular. "You're having premature contractions," she said, removing the monitor. "You need a hospital, real OB care, but that requires authorization, and the system's backed up because of the weekend." Authorization? I couldn't process what she was saying. My babies are in danger. "I understand that. I'm telling you what the protocol is. I'll mark this as urgent, but medical transport won't happen until Monday at the earliest unless you're actively delivering or showing signs of fetal demise." Fetal demise. Such clinical words for unimaginable loss. "I can't wait until Monday," I whispered. "Please, isn't there anything?" "I'll give you fluids and something to try to stop the contractions. That's the best I can do within my scope here." She wasn't being cruel, just constrained by systems designed around liability, not mercy. They set up an IV, pumped me full of medication that made my heart race and my hands shake. The contractions slowed but didn't stop. I was moved to a medical observation cell, solitary, with a security camera watching my every movement. The only improvement was a real mattress on the concrete platform, thin but better than nothing. Saturday crawled by, then Sunday. The medication kept the contractions manageable but didn't stop the bleeding. I felt the babies moving occasionally, weak flutters that both relieved and terrified me. I slept in fragments, waking to pain or fear or the overwhelming sense of helplessness. Sunday evening, a public defender finally came. Young, overwhelmed, with a caseload too large and hours too few. She reviewed my case while I sat across from her in an interview room, still in the paper scrubs they'd given me after my own clothes had become too blood-soaked. "The security footage shows someone else placing the tablet in your bag," she said, and relief nearly knocked me over. "You were set up. I don't know why yet, but we have enough to get the charges dropped. You'll be released first thing Monday morning." Can you get me to a hospital tonight? I'm 22 weeks pregnant with triplets and having complications. I saw the medical notes. They've designated you stable for now. I understand it's not fair. I know the system is broken, but I can't override medical determinations, and they won't transport you unless you're critical. 12 more hours and you'll be free to get whatever care you need. 12 hours. It might as well have been 12 years. That final night was the longest of my life. The contractions intensified again around midnight, coming in waves that left me gasping and clutching the thin mattress. I pressed the call button repeatedly, but the night staff was minimal and slow to respond. When someone finally came, they checked my vitals, noted that I was stable, and left. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to explain that stable meant nothing when you were slowly losing everything that mattered. But I'd learned by now that screaming only made you invisible faster. only cemented their view of you as hysterical, unreliable, difficult. Instead, I talked to my babies. Out loud, in whispers, my hand spread across my swollen belly. Hold on, I told them. Just a little longer. We're going to be okay. We're going to get out of here and we'll go to a real hospital and they'll take care of you. I promise. Please, just hold on. Around 3 in the morning, I felt a sensation I couldn't name. A shifting, a wrongness deeper than pain. I called out, but no one came. The contractions were overlapping now, barely any break between them. I tried every breathing technique I'd learned from the pregnancy books I'd borrowed from the library. Nothing helped. When the morning shift arrived at 6, they found me curled on my side, barely conscious, the mattress beneath me soaked with blood. Finally, someone called for emergency transport. The ambulance ride was a blur. Sirens, voices, hands checking my pulse and blood pressure and trying to find fetal heartbeats. I heard them talking over me, using words like placental abruption and fetal distress and prepare the OR. At the hospital, everything moved at lightning speed. Forms shoved in front of me to sign, IVs placed in both arms. A doctor with gray hair and steady hands explaining that they needed to do an emergency cesarean, that the babies were in critical danger, that they'd do everything they could. Do you understand? She asked gently. At 22 weeks, survival rates are very low. We'll have the NICU team ready, but you need to prepare yourself. Save them, I interrupted. Please, whatever it takes. They deserve a chance. She squeezed my hand. We'll do everything we can. The operating room was bright and cold, and full of people moving with choreographed precision. They draped me, numbed me from the chest down, placed a screen so I couldn't see the surgery. I felt pressure, tugging, strange sensations that weren't quite pain. Then I heard it, a tiny, weak cry, more like a mewling kitten than a human baby, but unmistakably alive. First one's out, someone announced. Girl, 520 grams, breathing on her own for now. Another minute. More pressure, more tugging. A second cry, even weaker. Second one. Girl, 480 grams, needs respiratory support. The third baby came out silent. I heard the urgency in everyone's voices, heard someone say, no respiratory effort, and begin resuscitation. Time stopped. The beeping of monitors became the only sound I could focus on. Then, finally, a small, fragile cry. First one's responding, boy, 445 grams, critical but stable. They let me see them for just a moment before whisking them away to the NICU. 3 impossibly tiny humans, translucent skin showing every vein, eyes still fused shut, fighting for every breath in a world they weren't supposed to enter yet. My daughters, my son, my whole heart, now beating outside my body in 3 separate isolates. The doctor finished the surgery, repairing the damage, stopping the bleeding that had been slowly draining my life for 3 days. In recovery, a social worker came to speak with me about the circumstances of my detention, about filing complaints, about trauma resources. I nodded through it all, but my mind was in the NICU, counting minutes until I could see my babies again. A nurse brought me photos. 3 tiny bodies, tubes and wires covering most of them, but alive, so impossibly, miraculously alive. They're fighters, she said warmly, especially for triplets at 22 weeks. The next 72 hours are critical, but they've got a chance. I held those photos and cried for the first time since everything had started. Not quiet tears, but deep, shaking sobs that hurt my surgical incisions and cleared something toxic from my chest. The hospital kept me for 5 days while I recovered and while the babies fought their own battles in the NICU. I spent every possible moment there, scrubbed and gowned, my hands inside the isolate portals, my fingers resting gently on skin so fragile I was terrified I'd bruise it just by touching. The nurses taught me how to do kangaroo care, holding each baby against my bare chest, skin to skin, letting my body regulate their temperature and heart rate in ways machines couldn't. Those hours were sacred. I'd talk to them, sing to them, tell them about the life we'd have once they were strong enough to leave this place. The NICU was its own world, with its own rules and rhythms. I met other parents, some whose babies had been there for months, others who'd just arrived. We shared a particular kind of grief and hope that outsiders couldn't understand. We celebrated every gram gained, every successful breathing attempt, every day survived. A billing counselor visited on my 3rd day. The numbers she showed me were astronomical. The emergency surgery, 3 NICU beds, round-the-clock specialized care. My student insurance covered some of it, but I'd be in debt for the rest of my life. I signed the papers anyway. What choice did I have? On my 5th day, as I was being discharged but the babies remained, a man in an expensive suit appeared in the NICU family room where I was pumping breast milk. "Excuse me," he said politely, "are you the mother of the Cross Triplets?" I froze. "What?" "The Cross Triplets, in isolates 7, 8, and 9. He showed me his hospital credentials, head of security. "We need to verify some information for the birth certificates. You listed Nathan Cross as the father?" I had. It had felt important, even knowing he'd never acknowledge them. They deserved to have both parents' names on their records. "Yes," I said carefully. "Why?" Mr. Cross's office was contacted for paternity verification, which is standard procedure for NICU patients who might need extended care. He requested proof. The man's expression was carefully neutral. "The DNA results came back this morning. He's on his way here now." My heart stopped. "He's coming here?" "He should arrive within the hour." I had exactly 47 minutes to panic, to try to make myself presentable, to rehearse and discard 100 different things I might say. I was in sweatpants donated by the hospital charity closet, my hair unwashed, my body still tender from surgery. I looked like exactly what I was, a broke student who just survived a nightmare. Nathan Cross arrived like a storm system, all expensive cologne and barely contained fury. But the fury wasn't directed at me. "Which incompetent bastards are responsible for this?" were the first words out of his mouth. I stood frozen in the NICU hallway, unsure how to respond. He saw me and stopped. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He actually remembered me, remembered our night together. Then his gaze traveled down to my still swollen abdomen, to my hospital bracelet on my wrist, and something shifted in his expression. "You tried to contact me," he said slowly, "months ago. My assistant said that you weren't interested in paternity claims. I know. I was there." He ran a hand through his hair, agitation rolling off him. "I never got those messages. My assistant has been systematically blocking anything he deemed problematic publicity. I found out about that this morning, right before I found out I have 3 children in critical care." He looked at me directly. "I need you to tell me everything." So I did. The whole story. From our night together, to the pregnancy discovery, to the scholarship problems, to the false arrest, to 3 days of being denied medical care while bleeding and in premature labor. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each detail. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment.
"I'm going to destroy everyone involved in this," he said finally. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. The campus police, the county jail, every person who ignored you, every system that failed you. But first, he looked toward the NICU doors. "Can I see them?"
We scrubbed in together. The nurses showed him to the isolates, explained the equipment, the prognosis, the care plan. I watched him look at each tiny baby, our daughters with their dark hair and delicate features, our son with his impossibly small fingers that wrapped reflexively around Nathan's pinky. "They're so little," he whispered. "Will they—" "They're fighters," I said, repeating what the nurses had told me. "They have a chance." He spent an hour there, just watching them breathe, watching their chest rise and fall, counting heartbeats on monitors. When we finally left, he turned to me in the hallway. "I failed you," he said bluntly. "I failed them. I should have been there, should have known, should have—" He stopped. "I can't undo the past, but I can make sure the future is different. You and these babies will want for nothing. Medical care, housing, education, security, whatever you need, it's yours. No strings, no conditions. Just let me be part of their lives." I wanted to be angry at him. Part of me was, angry at the months of struggling alone, at the assistant who'd blocked me, at the wealth and power he'd had while I'd suffered. But looking at his face, seeing genuine anguish and determination, I found I didn't have the energy for anger anymore. "They need their father," I said finally, "and I need help. So yes, but we do this right. Legal agreements, clear expectations, co-parenting plans. I won't be bought off or pushed aside." "I wouldn't want that," he said immediately. "I want to actually be a father, not just a bank account." We talked for hours that day, negotiating the immediate future. He had lawyers draw up temporary support agreements, hired a patient advocate to oversee the baby's care, arranged for me to move into a furnished apartment near the hospital so I could be close to the NICU. He made calls to his contacts in law enforcement and government, setting in motion investigations into everything that had happened. The next 3 months were a marathon of hope and setbacks. The babies developed complications typical of extreme prematurity: breathing problems, infections, feeding difficulties. There were nights I thought we'd lose them, days when one or another would crash and need emergency intervention. Nathan was there for all of it, learning the NICU routines, holding each baby for kangaroo care, sitting through the terrifying moments and the small victories. We weren't romantic, we weren't even friends at first, just 2 people bound by shared responsibility and love for 3 tiny humans. But slowly we developed a partnership built on mutual respect and common purpose. The investigation into my detention moved forward with shocking speed once Nathan's lawyers got involved. Security footage proved I'd been set up by another student, a girl who'd resented my scholarship, who'd slipped the stolen tablet into my bag and then tipped off security. She was arrested and charged. The county jail staff who denied me care for 3 days faced disciplinary action and retraining requirements. The systems that had failed me were finally being forced to confront their failures. But the real justice was quieter, more personal. It was Nathan learning to change a diaper on a 2-pound baby. It was me finishing my degree online while splitting time between classes and NICU visits. It was both of us being present the day our son came off the ventilator, the day our youngest daughter took her first full bottle, the day our oldest daughter finally gained enough weight to be held without special equipment. It was learning to be parents together, learning to trust each other, learning that sometimes the family you build looks nothing like what you imagined, but everything like what you need. The babies came home one by one over 4 months. First, our oldest daughter at 36 weeks adjusted age, Then our son 2 weeks later. Finally, our youngest, our miracle baby who'd needed resuscitation, came home a week before their original due date. Nathan had bought a house with a nursery designed by NICU nurses, staffed with night nurses to help us through the first months, equipped with every piece of medical equipment we might need. But the first night we were all home together, we sent the night nurses away and did it ourselves, the two of us, taking shifts, learning the rhythm of 3 babies with different needs and temperaments. I stood in the nursery at 3 in the morning holding our youngest daughter while she finished a bottle, watching Nathan rock our son in the corner while our oldest slept peacefully in her crib. The room was quiet except for soft breathing and the occasional contented sound from a milk-drunk baby. "I never thought we'd make it here," I said quietly. Nathan looked up, exhaustion and contentment mixing on his face. "We almost didn't." But we did. I looked down at the baby in my arms, at her perfect round face, her eyes that were just starting to focus and see the world, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. They did. The lawsuits settled eventually, money I put into trusts for the baby's futures, money that couldn't undo trauma but could at least prevent it from defining their lives financially. The policies changed too, slowly but steadily. Campus police received medical training, county jails implemented mandatory health screening for pregnant inmates. It wasn't enough, it would never be enough, but it was something. Nathan and I never became a conventional couple. We tried dating once the babies were 6 months old, but we realized we worked better as partners and co-parents than as romantic partners. We shared custody, shared holidays, shared the million small decisions that come with raising 3 human beings. We respected each other, supported each other, and loved our children with the fierce, protective love of people who'd almost lost everything. The babies thrived. They hit their milestones, late sometimes because of their premature start, but they hit them. First smiles, first laughs, first words. Our daughters were bold and curious. Our son was thoughtful and gentle. They were individuals, not just the triplets, each with their own personality emerging more clearly every day. On their 2nd birthday, we threw a party in the backyard of Nathan's house, our house now, in a way, since I'd moved into the guest suite to make co-parenting easier. Friends from the NICU came, other triplet families, people who understood what it meant to celebrate 2 years of life that almost never happened. I watched the babies smash cake into their faces, watched them toddle around on unsteady legs, watched them experience joy with the pure, uncomplicated abandon of children who had no memory of isolates and tubes and fighting for every breath. Nathan found me standing apart from the crowd, taking it all in. "You're crying," he observed gently. "I'm just remembering. That cell, that concrete bench, how close we came." "But we didn't," he repeated my words from that first night home. "We made it. They made it. Because of you. Because you fought when no one else would." I shook my head. "We fought. All of us, together." He pulled me into a hug and we stood there watching our children discover the wonder of birthday cake and bubbles and being alive. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I'd first seen those 3 heartbeats on the ultrasound screen. It was harder and more complicated and required more grace and compromise than any fairy tale promised. But it was ours, built from crisis and choice, from failure and redemption, from the simple truth that love, in all its messy, imperfect forms, was stronger than the systems designed to break us. My babies would grow up knowing their story, knowing what they'd survived, what we all survived, knowing that justice sometimes comes slowly but can come nevertheless, knowing that family is built not just from biology, but from presence, from showing up, from choosing each other day after day. And they would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them when they couldn't fight for themselves, that she demanded they be seen, be valued, be saved, that she refused to let systems designed to dismiss and diminish succeed in erasing their possibility. They would know they were wanted,
They would know they were worth fighting for. They would know they were loved. That knowledge, more than any settlement money or policy change, was the real victory, the real justice, the real happy ending to a story that had almost ended in tragedy. Standing in that backyard, watching 3 two-year-olds experience pure joy, I finally let myself believe we'd actually made it to the other side. Not unscathed, we'd never be unscathed, but whole, together, alive. And that was everything.